The giant room was bigger than 10 football fields put together. Strange creatures from across the galaxy sat in tall seats that reached up to the ceiling. Some looked like walking crystals that sparkled in the light. Others were like giant squids with arms that moved like snakes. There were beings made of gas that changed colors and insect-like creatures with hard shells and clicking sounds. This was the Galactic Academic Council, where the smartest beings in the universe came to make important decisions. Today they were meeting to talk about a new species that had been discovered just a few months ago. The species was called humans, and they lived on a small blue planet in a system they called Sol. Professor Zethka was the leader of today's meeting. His body was made of living crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows around the room. When he spoke, his voice sounded like music made of glass. He looked down at his notes and shook his head. "My fellow professors," he said, "we are here to discuss the humans. From what we have seen, they are not very advanced. They still burn old plants and dead animals for energy. They fight wars over pieces of land. They have only just learned to leave their planet." Dr. Zilnox was sitting in the front row. She looked like a giant octopus with purple skin and arms that never stopped moving. Her species, the Aquarians, had been studying space for thousands of years. She had seen many primitive species before, but humans seemed especially backward. "I have been watching them for weeks," she said, her arms waving as she talked. "They are so primitive it is almost funny. Look at this." She pointed to a big screen that showed pictures of Earth. There were cars stuck in traffic, smoking factories, and crowds of people pushing each other in busy streets. "See how they waste energy?" Dr. Zilnox continued. "They burn fuel to move. Metal boxes with only 1 or 2 people inside. They could share transportation, but they choose to be wasteful. They pollute their own air and water. What kind of intelligent species destroys its own home?" Professor Ethmore floated near the ceiling. His body was made of glowing gas that looked like a cloud with a face. His species had learned to live without solid bodies long ago. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind blowing through trees. "The humans confuse me," Moore said. "They have the technology to talk to each other instantly across their entire planet, but they use it to share pictures of their food and argue about silly things. They could use their communication networks to solve problems together, but instead they waste time on nonsense." Dr. Keflon was different from the others. She looked like a praying mantis, but was as big as a horse. Her species, the Zentauri, were known for being very organized and logical. Everything they did was planned perfectly. When she saw how humans lived, she felt sick. "The worst part," Dr. Keflon said, her mouth parts clicking as she spoke, "is that they have no system at all. Look at how they get food." The screen showed a grocery store full of people choosing from thousands of different products. "It is complete chaos. People just grab whatever they want. There is no planning, no order, no logic." She pointed with one of her sharp arms. "In a proper civilization, experts would decide what food each person needs. They would calculate nutrition requirements and distribute food efficiently. But humans just let people choose randomly. It is wasteful and stupid." The other professors nodded in agreement. They came from civilizations where everything was organized by smart leaders. Food was distributed by experts who knew exactly what each person needed. Jobs were assigned based on ability tests. Resources were allocated by powerful computers that could calculate the best use for everything. Professor Zethka brought up more pictures of Earth. "Look at their cities," he said. "No planning at all. Buildings of different sizes and shapes are scattered everywhere. Some areas have too many people, others have too few. A proper city would be designed by experts who understand traffic flow, population density, and resource distribution." "It gets worse," added Dr. Zilnox. "They have something they call markets, where people just trade things back and forth. With no supervision, anyone can sell anything to anyone else. There are no controls, no quality standards, no central authority making sure trades are fair." The screen showed a busy marketplace where people were buying and selling fruits, vegetables, clothes, and tools. To the alien professors, it looked like madness. People were shouting prices, arguing about quality, and making deals without any official approval. How do they prevent cheating? Asked Professor Ethmore. How do they make sure the quality is good? How do they know if prices are fair? They don't, said Dr. Keflon. They just hope for the best. It is the most primitive system I have ever seen. Any civilized species would have government experts who set fair prices and check quality. But humans just let anyone buy and sell whatever they want. Professor Zethka looked at his notes again. The human representative will be here soon. According to our information, they are sending someone called Jake Murphy. He works in something called economics, which seems to be their word for the study of their chaotic trading system. The professors laughed. Their version of laughter sounded like crystals ringing, water bubbling, wind whistling, and insects buzzing all at the same time. They have people who study chaos? Asked Dr. Zilnox. What is there to study? It is just random people doing random things. Perhaps, said Professor Ithmore. This Jake Murphy can explain why his species chooses to live in such disorder. Maybe there is something we are missing, though I cannot imagine what. Dr. Keflon's mandibles clicked with amusement. I doubt it. We have seen this pattern before. Primitive species always think their backwards ways are somehow special. They will learn better when they join galactic civilization. The massive doors at the far end of the room began to open. They were so big that it took several minutes for them to swing wide enough for someone to enter. The alien professors turned to look, expecting to see their human visitor. A small figure walked through the doorway. Compared to the giant aliens, Jake Murphy looked tiny. He was wearing a simple black suit and carrying a briefcase. His hair was a little messy, and he looked nervous as he walked down the long aisle between the seats. The alien stared at him as he made his way to the small podium at the center of the room. He seemed so ordinary, so unremarkable. This was supposed to be one of the smartest humans on their planet, but he looked like he would rather be anywhere else. Welcome, human, Professor Zethka said, his crystal voice echoing through the chamber. You stand before the greatest minds in the galaxy. We have gathered to decide whether your species is ready to join galactic civilization. Jake cleared his throat and spoke into the microphone. Thank you for this opportunity. I am honored to represent humanity today. His voice was quiet and shaky. The aliens had to strain to hear him over the size of the huge room. Indeed, said Dr. Zilnox, her tentacles curling with what looked like a smile. We have been observing your species for some time. We have seen your primitive social structures, your wasteful resource distribution, and your chaotic trading systems. Please tell us about your civilization's greatest achievements. Jake stood alone at the podium, looking up at hundreds of alien faces staring down at him. The weight of representing all of humanity pressed down on his shoulders. He took a deep breath and prepared to speak. The alien professors were already convinced they knew everything about humans. They had seen the chaos, the waste, the lack of organization. They were ready to classify humanity as just another primitive species that might be worth checking on again in a few thousand years. But Jake Murphy was about to change everything. Professor Zethka pressed a button on his crystal arm, and the giant screen above them came to life. Images of Earth appeared, showing busy streets, crowded markets, and factories with smoke coming out of tall chimneys. The alien professors had chosen these pictures carefully to show how backward humans seemed to be. As you can see, Professor Zethka said, his voice ringing like a bell, your species shows all the signs of a civilization that has not learned proper organization. Look at these images of your cities. There is no order, no planning, no system. The screen showed a traffic jam in downtown Chicago. Hundreds of cars were stuck bumper to bumper, not moving. Smoke poured from exhaust pipes, and drivers looked frustrated behind their steering wheels. This is exactly what I mean, said Dr. Zilnox, her purple tentacles waving at the screen. Look at this waste. Hundreds of people sitting in metal boxes, burning fuel, going nowhere. In a proper civilization, transportation would be planned by experts. People would travel efficiently, without waste. Jake looked at the screen and then at the alien professors. He could see that they were trying to show him how primitive humans looked compared to their advanced civilizations. Our studies show that your species has no real system for getting resources to people, continued Professor Zethka. You seem to use some kind of random trading that makes no sense. People just exchange things without any central authority making sure it is done correctly. Dr. Keflon, the giant insect professor, clicked her mandibles together. We have watched your markets for weeks. It is the most disorganized thing we have ever seen. People just show up and trade whatever they want. There is no planning, no expert guidance, no quality control. The screen changed to show a farmer's market. People were walking around with baskets, choosing fruits and vegetables. Some were bargaining with sellers over prices. Others were comparing different products before making decisions. See this chaos, Dr. Keflon said, pointing with one of her sharp arms. People just grab whatever they want. No one is making sure they get proper nutrition. No one is calculating the best use of resources. It is complete madness. Professor Y.T. Moore floated down from the ceiling, his gaseous body swirling with colors that meant he was confused. What puzzles us most is how your species manages to survive with such a disorganized system. Most primitive species die out quickly because they cannot coordinate their efforts. The screen showed Wall Street during a busy trading day. People were running around, shouting numbers, waving papers in the air. To the alien professors, it looked like total chaos. This is your financial center, said Dr. Zilnox. It looks like some kind of riot. People are screaming and running around with no apparent purpose. How can this possibly help your civilization? Jake shifted uncomfortably at the podium. The aliens were showing him some of the most successful parts of human civilization and describing them as primitive chaos. In our civilizations, Professor Zethka explained, all important decisions are made by experts who have studied for centuries. They use advanced computers to calculate the best way to distribute resources. They plan everything carefully to avoid waste. Dr. Keflon nodded her triangular head. For example, in my civilization, the Central Planning Council decides what food each person should eat based on their job, age, and health status. Computer systems calculate exactly how much of each nutrient every individual needs. Same with jobs, added Professor Y. Moore. Young people take tests to determine what work they are best suited for. Then they are assigned to positions where they can be most useful to society. No one wastes time doing work they are not qualified for. The screen showed a busy restaurant kitchen where cooks were preparing dozens of different meals. Orders were coming in constantly, and the kitchen staff was working quickly to fill them. Look at this waste, said Dr. Zilmox. They are making so many different types of food? In a logical system, there would be 3 or 4 standard meals that provide proper nutrition. Why make hundreds of different dishes when a few efficient ones would work better? Jake listened patiently as the aliens continued their analysis. They were showing him images of human life and completely misunderstanding what they were seeing. The most puzzling thing, said Professor Zethka, is how your species manages to create anything complex. Building a spaceship requires coordination between thousands of people. How do you organize such efforts without central planning? The screen showed a car factory where robots and humans worked together to build vehicles. It looked busy and complicated, with parts moving on conveyor belts and workers doing different tasks. This factory appears to be chaos, said Dr. Keflon. Workers are doing different jobs without any apparent coordination. Pots are moving in all directions. How do they know they are building the right thing? And look at this, added Dr. Zilnox, as the screen showed a shopping mall full of people. Hundreds of different stores selling thousands of different products. How do people know what to buy? How do store owners know what to sell? It makes no sense. Professor Ithmore's gaseous form turned bright red, which meant he was getting frustrated. The inefficiency is staggering. Look at all these people walking around, comparing prices, choosing between similar products. In a proper system, experts would determine the best product in each category, and everyone would use that one. The alien professors were getting more worked up as they continued their analysis. Everything they saw about human civilization seemed backwards to them. "What really concerns us," said Professor Zethka, "is that your species has somehow managed to achieve spaceflight despite all this chaos. It suggests that you might have some hidden coordination system that we cannot detect." Dr. Kethlon leaned forward in her seat. "Perhaps they use some form of hive mind that we have not discovered yet. That would explain how they can work together on complex projects despite the apparent disorder. Or maybe," suggested Dr. Zilnox, "they have secret planning councils that coordinate everything behind the scenes. The chaos we see might just be a cover for the real organization." Jake had been listening to this for almost an hour now. The galaxy's smartest beings were looking at human civilization and seeing only confusion and waste. They were completely missing the point. "If I may," Jake said, speaking into the microphone for the first time since his introduction. The alien professors stopped talking and looked down at him. They had been so busy analyzing human primitiveness that they had almost forgotten he was there. "Please," said Professor Zethka, his crystal form dimming slightly with what looked like polite interest. "Tell us how your species manages to function despite all this disorder." Jake took a deep breath. This was his chance to explain what the aliens were really looking at. "I think there might be a big misunderstanding here," he said, his voice getting stronger. "What you are seeing is not chaos at all. It is actually the most advanced resource distribution system that has ever been created." The chamber fell completely silent. The alien professors stared at Jake with expressions that their translators could not quite capture. "Advanced?" Dr. Zilnox said, her tentacles stopping their constant movement for the first time. "You call that chaos advanced?" "Yes," Jake replied, feeling more confident now. "What you are looking at is the most sophisticated coordination system in the known universe. It is so advanced that it looks like chaos to anyone who does not understand how it works." Professor Ithmore's gaseous form flickered between different colors. "Young human, we have studied civilizations for thousands of years. We know the difference between order and chaos." "With respect, Professor," Jake said, "I do not think you do. Not when it comes to this system. What you are seeing is millions of people processing information and making decisions faster and more accurately than any computer system ever built." The alien professors exchanged glances. Their various forms of nonverbal communication filled the chamber with clicks, color changes, and tentacle movements. "Explain," said Professor Zethka simply. Jake smiled. Finally, he had their attention. The alien professors burst into laughter. The sound filled the massive chamber like a strange orchestra. Professor Zethka's crystal body rang like wind chimes. Dr. Zilnox's tentacles shook as she made bubbling sounds. Professor Ithmore's gaseous form flashed through bright colors while making sounds like rushing air. Dr. Kethlon's mandibles clicked rapidly in what sounded like a machine gun. "Sophisticated?" Dr. Zilnox said between her bubbling laughs. "Little human, we have watched 1,000 civilizations rise and fall. We know what real sophistication looks like. What you call advanced, we call primitive confusion." "You are very young," added Professor Ithmore, his form still flickering with amused colors. "Your species has only been using tools for a few thousand years. We have been studying advanced civilization since before your son was born." Jake stood calmly at the podium. During his years teaching economics at Northwestern University, he had faced many skeptical students. None of them had been giant alien professors, but the principle was the same. When people did not understand something, they often laughed at. "At first, I understand your reaction," Jake said. "Most humans make the same mistake when they first learn about our economic system. They see all the activity and think it is random chaos. But there is actually a very complex order underneath." Dr. Kethlon leaned forward in her seat, her large insect eyes focused on Jake. Young human, we have computers that can calculate resource distribution for billions of people. We have planning systems that can coordinate activities across entire star systems. You are asking us to believe that random individuals can do better than our advanced technology? Not random, Jake corrected. That is the key point. The people are not acting randomly, they are acting on information. Every single decision is based on careful calculation. He pointed to the screen that still showed the busy marketplace. Look at that woman choosing between two types of apples. She is not choosing randomly. She is processing information about price, quality, nutritional value, taste, and how long the apples will last. She is doing complex calculations in her head. Professor Zethka's crystal form stopped ringing. One person making one decision about apples is not sophisticated coordination. You are right, Jake agreed. One person making one decision is not sophisticated. But that is not what you are seeing. You are seeing millions of people making billions of decisions every day. Each person is processing information that no central computer could handle. Jake gestured to the screen. That marketplace you showed? Me has maybe 200 people in it. But each person is making dozens of decisions. They are choosing between hundreds of products. They are comparing prices, quality, and their own needs. They are processing more information in 1 hour than your biggest computers could handle in a week. The alien professors had stopped laughing. They were listening now, though they still looked doubtful. But without central coordination, Doctor, Zilnox said, how do you make sure the right products get to the right people? How do you prevent waste and shortages? Jake smiled. This was exactly the right question. That is the beautiful part of the system. We do not need central coordination because we have something better. We have prices. Prices? Professor Ithmore's gaseous form shifted to a color that meant confusion. Yes, prices carry information through the entire system automatically. If more people want apples, the price of apples goes up. This tells farmers to grow more apples. It also tells people to buy fewer apples or to buy other fruits instead. The price change solves both problems at once. Jake pointed to the screen. Again, see that man comparing the prices of different vegetables? The prices are telling him which vegetables are abundant and which are scarce. If tomatoes cost more than usual, it means there are not enough tomatoes, so he might buy cucumbers instead. His choice helps balance supply and demand. Dr. Kethlon's mandibles had stopped clicking. You are saying that prices automatically coordinate the decisions of millions of people? Exactly, and it happens instantly. When demand changes anywhere in the system, prices change to reflect the new situation. This sends signals to everyone else in the system. Producers know what to make more of. Consumers know what to buy less of. The whole system adjusts automatically. Professor Zethka's crystal form began to glow brighter. But surely this leads to chaos. Without central planning, how do you ensure that important needs are met? Jake nodded. That is what makes the system even more remarkable. It automatically prioritizes the most important needs. If something is really necessary, people will pay high prices for it. High prices attract more producers. More producers mean more supply. More supply brings prices back down. The system solves its own problems. The chamber had become very quiet. The casual dismissal of human civilization was starting to change into something that looked like scientific curiosity. Let me give you an example, Jake continued. Last year, there was a shortage of computer chips. The shortage made chip prices go up. High prices did 3 things automatically. First, they told companies to use chips more carefully. Second, they told chip makers to produce more chips. Third, they told inventors to find ways to make products that used fewer chips. Dr. Zilnox's tentacles had gone completely still. And this happened without any central authority giving orders? No orders needed. The price system carried all the information. Companies that wasted chips lost money. Companies that saved chips made money. The system rewarded efficiency and punished waste, all automatically. Professor Ithmore floated closer to the podium. You are describing a system that processes information faster than our best computers? Much faster, Jake confirmed. Your computers have to collect information, analyze it, and then send out instructions. Our system does all of that simultaneously. Every price change is both a piece of information and an instruction. The system updates itself millions of times per second. The alien professors were beginning to look uncomfortable. These beings had built civilizations that spanned multiple star systems. They had computers that could manage the resources of entire planets. But they were being told that a species they had dismissed as primitive had discovered something they had never thought possible. But what about coordination of complex projects? Professor Zethka asked. Surely you need central planning to build spaceships or organize large companies? Jake shook his head. Even complex projects use the same system. Companies compete to build the best spaceships at the lowest cost. They coordinate with thousands of suppliers automatically through the price system. No central authority has to tell them what to do. How is this possible? Dr. Kethlon asked, her voice much quieter than before. Because the system aligns individual goals with group goals, Jake explained. A company that wants to make money has to make products that people actually want. A worker who wants to earn more money has to develop skills that are valuable to others. Everyone pursuing their own interests ends up helping everyone else. That cannot be right, Dr. Zilnox sighed. Selfish behavior leads to conflict and waste. Not in our system, Jake replied. Selfish behavior is channeled through market competition. If I want to get rich, I have to figure out how to serve other people better than my competitors do. The more people I help, the more money I make. Selfishness becomes a force for cooperation. The silence in the chamber was now complete. The alien professors were struggling to understand what they were hearing. You are telling us, Professor Zethka said slowly, that your entire civilization is coordinated by millions of people pursuing their own interests, and this somehow creates better results than central planning? That is exactly what I am telling you, Jake said. And it works so well that most humans do not even realize how remarkable it is. They just participate in it every day without thinking about the miracle they are part of. The implications were starting to sink in. These alien civilizations, with all their advanced technology and careful planning, were being told that a supposedly primitive species had discovered a way to coordinate economic activity that was more efficient than anything they had ever imagined, Professor. Ithmore's form had turned a deep blue color that meant he was thinking very hard. How long has your species been using this system? In its current form, for about 300 years. But the basic principles have been developing for much longer. The alien professors sat in stunned silence. They had come to evaluate a primitive species and instead found teachers who might be able to solve problems they had been struggling with for millennia. Jake looked up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at him. For the first time since entering the chamber, he felt like he had their complete attention. Professor Zethka's crystal body began to glow brighter as he processed what Jake had said. His form sparkled with different colors, which meant he was thinking very hard about something important. Professor Murphy, he said, using Jake's title. For the first time. You speak of automatic coordination, but what about really big projects? Surely your species needs central planning for major work like building cities or creating new technologies? Jake shook his head with a small smile. That is where the system becomes truly amazing. Let me show you how it works with something. Very simple. He looked up at the screen. Can you show them a pencil? The display changed to show an ordinary yellow pencil, the kind that millions of school children used every day. The alien professors looked at the screen with confusion. Why was this human showing them something so basic? This simple object, Jake began, requires the work of thousands of people from all around the world. But no single person coordinates their efforts, no government agency tells them what to do. No central computer manages the process. Dr. Zilnox's tentacles began to move slowly. She was paying very close attention now. Explain. The wood in this pencil comes from trees in Oregon. Jake said. Those trees are cut down by workers who use saws made from steel. The steel comes from iron mines in Minnesota. The iron is dug up by miners using machines built in Detroit. Those machines run on fuel that comes from oil wells in Alaska. The alien professors were listening carefully now. This was not what they had expected to hear. But that is just the beginning, Jake continued. The yellow paint on the pencil contains chemicals made in New Jersey. Those chemicals require materials that come from mines in 6 different countries. The metal band that holds the eraser is made from copper mined in Arizona and zinc from Nevada. Professor Whittemore floated closer to the podium. His gaseous form had turned a deep purple color, which meant he was very interested. You are saying that people from all these different places work together to make one pencil? Not just people, Jake said. Companies, factories, ships, trucks, and warehouses. The graphite in the center of the pencil comes from mines in Sri Lanka. It is shipped across the ocean to factories in China, where it is processed and shaped. Then it is shipped to America and combined with the wood. Dr. Kethlon's large insect eyes were fixed on Jake. But how do all these people know to work together? Who tells the tree cutter in Oregon that someone in New York wants a pencil? Jake's smile grew wider. Nobody tells him. That is the remarkable part. The tree cutter does not know about pencils at all. He just knows that lumber companies will pay him for wood. The lumber companies do not know about pencils either. They just know that pencil factories will pay them for processed wood. This is impossible, Dr. Zilnox said, but her voice was uncertain now. Such coordination requires massive communication and planning. The communication happens through prices, Jake explained. When people want more pencils, pencil companies order more wood. This makes the price of wood go up slightly. Higher wood prices tell the lumber companies to cut more trees. Higher lumber prices tell the tree cutters to work more hours. The signal travels backward through the entire chain automatically. Professor Zethka's crystal form was now blazing with bright light. You are describing a coordination system that operates without central control? Exactly. And here is the most amazing part. Nobody in this entire chain needs to understand the whole system. The tree cutter does not need to know about pencil factories. The mine worker does not need to know about schools. Each person just responds to the price signals they see. The chamber was completely silent. These beings had spent centuries perfecting systems for coordinating the activities of billions of people across multiple planets. They had assumed that such coordination required massive computer systems and careful central planning. Let me give you an even better example, Jake said. Show them a smartphone. The screen displayed a modern smartphone. It looked simple enough, but Jake knew it would prove his point even better than the pencil. This device, Jake began, contains materials from more than 60 countries. The rare earth metals in its circuits come from mines in China and Africa. The glass screen is made from sand that comes from specific beaches in Japan. The lithium in the battery comes from salt flats in Chile. Double quotes. Dr. Kethlon's mandibles began clicking rapidly. How many people are involved in making this device? Millions, Jake said. The design team in California, the factory workers in China, the miners in dozens of countries, the truck drivers who transport materials, the ship crews who carry cargo across oceans. If you count everyone involved in the supply chain, it is probably 10 million people. Professor Ithmore's form was now flashing rapidly between different colors. 10 million people working together? That would require the most advanced coordination system we have ever seen. And yet, Jake said, no single person or organization coordinates all of them. There is no master smartphone coordinator telling everyone what to do. The system coordinates itself through millions of individual decisions and price signals. The alien professors were beginning to look very uncomfortable. They were realizing that what they had dismissed as primitive chaos was actually a coordination system more sophisticated than anything in their own civilizations. But surely, Dr. Zilnox said desperately, such a system would be full of mistakes and waste? Jake nodded. It makes mistakes all the time. Companies build products that nobody wants. Factories produce too much of some things and not enough. Of others, workers choose jobs they are not good at. Then how can you call it sophisticated? Professor Zethka asked. Because it corrects its own mistakes automatically, Jake replied. When a company makes a product nobody wants, it loses money and stops making that product. When there is too much of something, prices fall and production decreases. When there is not enough of something, prices rise and production increases. The system learns from every mistake. Dr. Keflon leaned forward in her seat. You're saying the system improves itself? Constantly. Every failure teaches it something new. Every success gets repeated and expanded. Companies that serve customers well grow larger. Companies that waste resources go out of business. Workers who develop valuable skills earn more money. The system rewards good decisions and punishes bad ones. Professor Ithmore had turned a bright silver color, which meant he was amazed. In our civilizations, when central planning makes a mistake, it can affect entire planets. Millions of people suffer until the bureaucracy figures out what went wrong and fixes it. Our system makes smaller mistakes but fixes them faster, Jake explained. If one company fails, there are hundreds of competitors ready to take its place. If one worker makes a bad decision, it only affects that one person. The system is designed to contain failures and spread successes. The implications were staggering. These alien professors had spent their careers perfecting centralized systems for managing civilization. They had computers that could track the resources of entire star systems. But they were learning about a system that was more flexible, more responsive, and more intelligent than anything they had ever imagined. Professor Murphy, Dr. Zilnox said quietly, how does your species prevent this system from spinning out of control? How do you maintain stability when millions of people are making independent decisions? Jake smiled. That is the final piece of the puzzle. The system maintains stability because it is based on voluntary exchange. Nobody can force anyone else to make a trade. Every transaction happens only when both people think they will benefit. This creates automatic balance. If someone charges too much for their product, customers go to competitors. If someone offers too little for a job, workers go elsewhere. The system naturally moves toward prices and wages that most people find acceptable. Professor Zethka's crystal form had gone very dim. He was thinking so hard that he had stopped glowing entirely. Professor Murphy, what you are describing sounds like the solution to computational problems that have challenged our greatest minds for thousands of years. Jake nodded. We call it the miracle of the market. Most humans take it for granted. But you are right. It is probably the most sophisticated system our species has ever developed. The alien professors sat in stunned silence, finally beginning to understand that they had completely misjudged human civilization. The alien professors sat in complete silence for several long minutes. Their various forms of body language showed that they were processing information faster than they ever had before. Dr. Zilnox's tentacles had stopped moving entirely. Professor Ithmore's gaseous form had turned a steady white color. Dr. Keflon's mandibles were completely still. Professor Zethka's crystal body barely glowed at all. Finally, Dr. Zilnox spoke, and for the first time, her voice sounded respectful. Professor Murphy, what you are describing would require computing power beyond anything we currently possess. Yet you claim this system operates naturally through individual choices made by ordinary people? Jake nodded. That is exactly right. Each human brain acts like a small computer, processing information about needs, wants, and opportunities. When you multiply that by 8 billion people, you get the most powerful distributed computing system that has ever existed. Professor Zethka's crystal form suddenly blazed with bright light as understanding hit him. The mathematical beauty is extraordinary. Instead of trying to centrally calculate all possible resource allocations, you have distributed the computing to the point where the resources are actually used. And it gets better, Jake continued. The system becomes more efficient as it grows. More people means more processors working on the problem. More information, more choices, more innovation, The system improves itself simply by growing larger. Dr. Kethlon slowly leaned forward in her massive chair. Our computer models have always suggested that such a system would be unstable. How do you prevent complete collapse when things go wrong? Jake smiled. We do not prevent things from going wrong. We let them go wrong quickly and locally. When a business makes bad decisions, it fails fast before it can hurt too many people. When a worker chooses the wrong job, only that worker suffers until they choose something better. Small failures prevent big disasters. Professor Y.T.H. Moore floated down closer to the podium, his form now cycling through colors that showed intense interest. Your species has solved the calculation problem that has puzzled civilizations for millions of years. We always thought resource allocation required central planning because the math was too complex for distributed systems. But here is something even more remarkable, Jake said. The system does not just allocate existing resources efficiently. It creates new resources that never existed before. People competing with each other constantly invent better ways to do things. Dr. Zilnox's tentacles began moving again, but slowly and thoughtfully. What do you mean by creating new resources? Competition forces innovation, Jake explained. If I want to sell more products than my competitor, I have to make them better, cheaper, or both. This drives everyone to constantly improve their methods. The system creates new technology, new efficiency, new wealth that did not exist before. The screen behind Jake showed images of human technological progress over the past century. Cars, airplanes, computers, smartphones, medical devices, space rockets. The progression was dramatic. All of this innovation happened because people were competing with each other? Professor Zethka asked. Most of it, yes. Companies racing to build better products, workers training for better jobs, inventors trying to solve problems that people will pay to have solved. The system rewards anyone who can make life better. For others, Dr. Kethlon's large insect eyes were fixed on the screen. But surely this creates massive inequality. Some people must become very wealthy while others suffer. Jake considered this carefully. It does create inequality. Some people become much richer than others. But here is what surprised even us. The system creates so much new wealth that even the poorest people today live better than the richest people lived 300 years ago. The screen showed statistics comparing living standards across different time periods. Life expectancy, infant mortality, access to clean water, literacy rates, caloric intake. The improvement was dramatic and consistent. The rising tide lifts all boats, Jake said. When the system creates new wealth, everyone benefits. The person who invents a better way to grow food becomes rich, but everyone gets cheaper food. The person who develops better medicine becomes wealthy, but everyone lives longer. Professor Ithmore's form had turned a bright gold color, which meant he was experiencing something like wonder. Your species has created a system where individual greed produces collective prosperity. That is one way to put it, Jake agreed. We have learned to harness self-interest and channel it toward serving others. The more people you help, the more money you make. The better you serve your customers, the more successful you become. The chamber buzzed with alien conversation as the professors began discussing among themselves. Their various forms of communication created a symphony of clicks, color changes, chimes, and whistles. Professor Zethka called for order. Professor Murphy, we need to ask you something important. How did your species discover this system? Was it designed by your greatest minds? Jake laughed. That is the most remarkable part of all. Nobody designed it. It evolved naturally over thousands of years. People just started trading with each other, and the system grew from there. Most humans still do not understand how it works. No central design? Dr. Zilnox asked, her tentacles moving in patterns that showed amazement. This system just appeared by itself? Through trial and error over centuries, Jake confirmed. Societies that used better trading systems prospered. Societies that used worse systems declined. The good ideas survived and spread, the bad ideas died out. Natural selection applied to economic systems. Dr. Kethlan's mandibles began clicking. Rapidly, we must completely revise our assessment of your species. What we thought was primitive chaos is actually the most advanced social technology we have ever encountered. Professor Ithmore floated in excited circles around the podium. The implications are staggering. If your species has solved distributed coordination through individual choice, what other problems might you have solutions for? More than solutions, Dr. Zilnox added, her tentacles weaving complex patterns of respect. This represents a fundamental breakthrough in social organization. Our civilizations could learn from this. Professor Zethka's crystal form was now blazing brighter than the chamber's lights. I hereby recommend that humanity be granted immediate status as a Level 3 civilization with full galactic citizenship rights. Their economic innovations alone represent contributions worthy of galactic study. The chamber erupted in the alien equivalent of applause. Crystals chimed, gases swirled in colorful patterns, tentacles waved rhythmically, and mandibles clicked. In harmony, Jake stood at the podium, amazed by the sudden change in attitude. "But we must ask more of you, Professor Murphy," Professor Zethka continued. "Would humanity be willing to share this knowledge with other species? Many of our civilizations struggle with resource allocation problems that your system might solve." Jake grinned widely. "I think we would be very happy to discuss it. After all, trade benefits everyone involved. The more civilizations that prosper, the better it is for all of us." The alien professors looked at each other with expressions that could only be described as excitement. They had come to evaluate what they thought was a primitive species and instead discovered teachers who could help them solve problems they had struggled with for millennia. "There is so much we need to learn," Dr. Zilnox said. "How do you handle market failures? How do you prevent monopolies? How do you deal with externalities? How do you maintain the system during technological disruption?" added Professor Ithmore. "What about coordination across different planetary environments?" asked Dr. Keth-Lon. Jake held up his hands with a laugh. "Those are all great questions. We have learned to handle most of these problems, though we are still improving our methods. Perhaps we could set up an exchange program. Your species could teach us about advanced technology, and we could share what we have learned about economic organization." Professor Zethka's form pulsed with what appeared to be joy. "An excellent proposal. We have much to learn from each other." As Jake prepared to leave the chamber, he could not help but smile. He had come here expecting to be judged by superior beings. Instead, he had spent an hour explaining basic economics to the most advanced minds in the galaxy, and they were treating him like he had just revealed the secrets of the universe. Perhaps, in a way, he had. The simple idea that millions of people pursuing their own interests could create a system more intelligent than any central planner had ever imagined was apparently revolutionary even to civilizations that had mastered interstellar travel. Jake walked toward the massive doors, listening to the excited chatter of alien professors discussing the implications of what they had learned. Earth was about to become a very interesting place.